That cake is pretty amazing, isn't it? This is Renee Romeo, and I'm going to teach you how to make that cake with just a little bit of fondant, a beautiful cake on the inside, a little bit of buttercream, and some royal icing. All of the animals are going to be made here, and then the cake is going to be assembled elsewhere. So I'm going to be finishing up in my father-in-law's kitchen, and I'll do the royal icing, and I'll do all of the little embellishments that go onto the cake, as well as actually covering the cake in fondant in a different location. So today I'm just focusing on all of the animals. So I have an array of supplies here. I have a nice roller, I have a cutting kit made specifically for fondant, and then I have some cornstarch and other tools that I'm not exactly sure what I'll use, so we'll just go ahead as I go and let you know what I'm using. Now, I'm working off of sketches, so I've sketched out very loosely the animals that I need. I need some flowers and I need some leaves for the palm trees. So those are the things that I'm going to make out of fondant. And I always keep these close by so I can kind of reference them just so I can get the shapes right, and you'll do the exact same thing. So I have a little bit of cornstarch on my little rolling mat here, and I've got a little bit of fondant ready to go. So here's the consistency. It's kind of gooey and you can pull it apart pretty easily, but it's not wet, so don't make this wet. So what I'm going to do, I'll start with the elephant, and I know the elephant has a body that I need to go ahead and roll out. So I'll get my roller. And so normally with fondant, what you do is you roll this maybe 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch thick, depending on what you're working on. But I want these animals to be a little bit more dimensional, and so I'm going to leave this a little bit thicker than usual. Now in the cutting kit, you'll see there's a cutter with a nice angle. It's pretty sharp, but it's made out of plastic, and that's what you're going to use. So I'm just going to reference my little guy here and just go ahead and cut out kind of just a roundy, oblongy kind of shape here that's just going to translate into the shape of the elephant's body. And you know what? Things in nature are never perfect, so don't worry about getting this to look exactly perfect or exactly round or whatever. So I've rolled this fondant pretty thin, and it's about 1/16 of an inch thick. And you'll see I'm taking my little green cookie cutter and I'm going ahead and just cutting this out, placing it on top of this piece of foam, and getting out my little tool here so I can just press it right into the center and make this beautiful little well. And then I can transfer it over to this drying rack, and they're going to dry just like that. So now I'm starting the zebra, and this is in 2 pieces. So I do the body and then I do the head. So the body I have rolled out to, I don't know, I'd say a little over 1/8 of an inch thick. It's not really even, but it's not a problem. And so all I'm going to do now is just simply go ahead and trace the shape as best I can. And this can always be altered, so don't worry about making any mistakes at this point, because you can always alter this. So here's our basic shape. So I'm going to take this really great fondant smoother, and I'm just going to go ahead and just rub a little bit of cornstarch on here. And go ahead and smooth up all these edges like so. And what you can wind up doing here, now you'll see this is a nice crisp edge, but we don't want that. Animals don't have crisp edges on them. And we're just going to go ahead and smooth this out and make it kind of like a little roll along the edge. And let's just use this little pointy tool here, because I'd like to put a little indentation here where the legs are, just so you can see the difference here between the legs. And the great thing about it is it makes like a little smoothed out kind of rolled shape, which is exactly what you want. And we're just going to go ahead and do the other one. And I'm just kind of pressing this in, and then I can smooth it after the fact. So the head, I'm using another about 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm just going to cut out this kind of head shape. go together the same way as the elephant. And I'm just going to roll this out just a little bit here, just for the legs. And go ahead and cut that. And we'll just see how all of this is going to line up. And for the mane, I'm using a cookie cutter, so it'll be a lot easier to get a nice sharp edge. And you'll see what that's going to look like when it's on there. And the face is just a series of dots. Just layered, so that you get a three-dimensional look out of this when you're done. You can go ahead and take your smoother, smooth it out. And with the feet, I'm just going to attempt to make little toe paws. So let's try this. And this. It's really cute. So let's fashion the leaves for the palm trees. I'm using this cutter, which I believe is probably something to fashion a flower. But this is going to work, I think, pretty well for the palm tree leaves. Now here's my palm tree base, and it has 3 toothpicks coming out of the front. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this leaf a little bit of water in the middle and wrap it around the longer piece in the center. Like so. Kind of sticking it to itself. And just set it there for now. Then I'll take another leaf and do the same thing along the center. And I'll wrap it around the second toothpick and press it into itself. Now let's leave the leaves at the top alone for a minute. And then the third one, same way. But come in from the other side and go ahead and wrap that. So that's what it looks like. And I'm going to just take this and I'll set it on top of one of these little drying plastic pieces, like so. And let that dry just like that so that the leaves stay nice and open. Now the last bit of fondant that I need to do is for the sun on the top of the cake. And I've done a little bit of cheating here and bought some Archway cookies. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and cover the existing frosting with a piece of fondant. And I'm going to use the same cookie cutter that I used for the mane on the lion so that everything kind of goes together. And all I'm going to do here is just cut it out. Pry it up. Put a little bit of dab and hold on the back. And then apply it directly to the frosting on the cookie. And this is a great way to do this in case you don't want to bake a whole batch or you don't have any cookies ready for this. And looks really adorable and it's ready to go on the top. And so meet me in a couple of days and I'll show you how I do the rest of the cake. I just wanted you to see how I lay out all of these pieces to dry. So I have every one of them following a curve, just like in the cake. So I have some leaning against the cake pans, some on bowls, and some on little form pieces of plastic that you buy from Wilton. So you're going to do the exact same thing. Well, I'm on location and I'm just going ahead and putting a real thin crumb coat on this before I go ahead and put the white frosting over the top. So I'll put this in the fridge and let it harden up just a little bit before I go ahead and put that on. Now you'll see here I have a cardboard round. It's got a cutout hole in the center. You need this because we're stacking the cakes. And I'm just going to go ahead and place this straight on a plate. I've got 6-inch cakes here, and so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of buttercream on this piece of cardboard, and this is basically just acting like glue in order to get this cake to stick and not slide around. Now I had quite a bit of chocolate buttercream left over, so I mixed it in with the vanilla, but I wanted to show you just how wonderful this goes over cold buttercream and really makes it so much easier to spread this out, and you will never get a crumb of cake in this top coat. Beautiful. So I'm starting to roll out the fondant, and so I have it pre-colored, and I do that the same way I did the animals, just by hand kneading it and getting the exact color that I want, which is a blue. And so I have a fondant mat laid out as well, and this is a non-stick surface, and it has concentric circles stamped on this piece of plastic so that you can get the exact size you need to cover whatever size cake you have. So if I measure up the sides, across the top, and back down the side, my bottom layer actually needs a 20-inch circle, and the top layer needs a 16-inch circle. So I'm going to go ahead and roll these out. I've got my batch separated 2/3 and 1/3, and whatever's left over from the larger batch I'll add to the smaller batch to make the next circle. So I'm just going to lay this out. This has cornstarch along the bottom, and I'm just going to flatten it out with my fingers first and then go ahead and roll it. And I'm getting about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit thicker. You don't want it too thin because then it'll kind of rip apart on you as you place it over the cake. Everything is rolled out nice and even, and I've used a PVC pipe because this is a little larger than a normal rolling pin, so it's going to be hard to get this nice and even all the way across. So that's what I used. And so I have a knife handy to trim along the edge. I just pulled the cake out of the refrigerator. And then what I'm going to do is just, I have this kind of taped down onto the table so it doesn't move, is just peel away that tape, pull it up, and then you're simply going to take the fondant and roll it onto itself. Makes it a lot easier to apply this to the cake this way. And just like so, roll it onto the cake. Now don't worry about that cornstarch. It's going to be just fine when we're done with it. So we're just going to go ahead and take our little paddle, and we're going to just manipulate this a little bit so you kind of see. If I go down about 1 inch, 1.5 inches at a time, I'm going to go all around the cake just this way until it's smoothed out all the way to the bottom. So don't do too much at a time or you're going to get wrinkles in it. And pull it out as you go, like so. So look at how beautiful the cake is. And then you'll see toward the back side, I've got a couple little areas here that are problems, but they're really not problems. We're going to cover those with animals and no one will ever know but you and me. I have brand new dowels that I've cut down to the height of the cake, which is 5.5 inches. I have 6 of them. Probably overkill for the cake, but nobody ever hurt anything by doing anything overboard. So what I'm going to do at this point is just space them fairly evenly, a little bit in from the point of the cake, and I'm just going to insert it down all the way in to that cake base, which is this rotating cake base that I'm using. So I'm just going to go ahead around that perimeter, all 6, get them all the way down to the bottom. Now I have this great tool, it's a cake lifter, and I'm just going to go ahead and lift this cake off of this base. And then I'm going to eyeball it so that it winds up being right in the middle of this cake. And I think that looks great. So at this point, I need to insert a large dowel down the center, and you remember we had that little pop-out cardboard underneath this top layer. So let me just see what I have here for the height of the cake, and this looks perfect. So you'll see I have this sharpened to a tip so that it can go straight through this and not make any issues on the inside of the cake. And it went right through. So I just got done unwrapping all of the animals, and the way that I transported them is I had giant bubble wrap, and I actually saran wrapped each and every one and taped them to a little pillow pack, so that way it would maintain that curved feature that I incorporated into them when I made them. And I only lost a tail, but no problem. When I go ahead and do the royal icing, it'll cover everything up. So they're all in one piece. So at this point, I've got a nice batch of stiff royal icing, and that's what I'm going to use to stick all of the animals on. And so I've got a number 10 tip, and this just happens to be white. It's never going to be seen, so whatever color you have is fine. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I'll actually wind up doing is starting in the areas where I have these little pleats, so that way I can hide them and you won't ever see them again. So let's start with the elephant, and all I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and just put some dots of royal icing into the fondant at the tips of the pleats, because that's the highest point. So I've got that going, and from that point I could tell where I'm going to put the elephant. So I'm going to go to the back side of the elephant and just put a few dots here on the head and on the body. And that should be enough to just stick this guy right on. Perfect. Just like that. And he's secure, and we'll move on. Perfect. It looks great already. So if you have areas like this that have just little creases and stuff, I'm going to put some palm trees on there so you'll never see it. And let's go ahead and put the tiger on. Same thing. Now he's got a heavy head, so if he's got a heavy head, go ahead and put a little extra royal icing in those areas, and it'll hold him on really well. So my palm trees are going to come in here, so the tiger I think I'll put right over here. Now since these have been wrapped in saran wrap, they haven't completely dried, so they're still just a little bit pliable, which is perfect for this. So let's go and get his tail. This little tail broke off. Figure out what way it goes. There we go. And put a little royal icing behind the tail to hold that on. Just like that. And on the top, we'll go ahead and do the lion. Ooh, lion's going to be problematic. So I've started adding grass, and this is a number 5 tip with the royal icing tinted green. And all I'm doing here is just kind of pressing it in, and I'm going to start layering this. So the grass goes in first, and then the larger leaves go in over the top of it. And you really do want this layered look, because it'll wind up looking a little bit more realistic this way if you start off with the grass. So you'll see I'm starting to make the trunks for the palm trees, and really I'm just covering up these areas of the cake that are a little bit iffy. And so I'm just going to go ahead and keep layering this until I get the right tree trunk size. So this tip is a curved tip. Now it doesn't have a number on it, unfortunately, so I can't tell you which tip it is, but one end is a little thinner than the other, and it's shaped like a curve. So this is the buttercream. And I'm just going to go ahead and go over and over and over until I get exactly what I'm looking for here. So you'll see I started making vines and ran it through the monkey foot so it looks like he's hanging off of a vine. And now I'm going to go ahead and take the fondant leaves that I made, the larger ones, and attach them to the tops of the palm trees. And I'm just going to do this with a little bit of dab and hold. I'm about to do all the leaves on the tree. So this is basically like an African tree. And so I'm using tip 233. This has a bunch of little holes in the tip, and I'm just going to dab it and make this more of like a horizontal looking tree like they are in Africa. And it looks real fuzzy. It's great. So I'm deciding that the front of the cake is about here, and I'm going to go ahead, and the dowel's in the middle, so I'm pushing these little palm trees to the front. My little palm tree got a little crushed, so I'm going to try to fix that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put a dab of green royal icing on the top just to hold this in place really well. So I've got that going. And I've inserted a second toothpick into the top of this. So here I'm just going to press it right into the cake and into that bed of royal icing. Now the cookies need to be sandwiched together, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of white royal icing along the back to stick them together, just like so. Line those up and sandwich them. And then taking another couple of the toothpicks, inserting that in between. And now this is going to go directly into the cake behind the palm trees. Now also with this tip that has all the little holes, you can make this look like grass. So you're just going to go ahead and drag it like so, and you can kind of clean up the bottom of all the trees. Really cute. And I'm just taking the number 10 tip and putting little dots anywhere there's a gap in any of the decor. And it just neatens it up. It looks really cute too. So I've mixed up some black royal icing, and you'll see I'm starting on the stripes, and these are going to be 3-dimensional. So basically all you're going to do is you're going to take it from the top and press kind of hard so you can get a little bit more onto the top here so it kind of wraps around. So you can make these really cute stripes and drag and drag. And so basically all I'm using here is tip number 5, and that's exactly what you're going to do. Well, there you have it. Everything is done. The stripes are in. I put little black dots in the middle of all the flowers, and wow, I really have to get going because I think I'm going to be late for this party. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And you know what? It really isn't all that hard. It took me about 9 hours to do everything start to finish, and that's including baking the cake. So you can do this too for your next big event in your life. So this is Renee Romeo. Thank you so much for watching this great cake decorating project, and I hope to bring you another one in the future.